going into my basketball. Every time I rock, man, this is how we rap and raw. Peace to my man, now we got the camera out. Every time I spit it, cross over the...
All right. Hello, everybody. This is Josh, also known as Yashu, and you're tuning into episode 28 of the TLOY Talks podcast. We have a very special guest here today. He's an award-winning Toronto-based photographer whose vibrant work documents the beauty of fleeting moments and is an official photographer for the JUNO Awards. He's worked with the likes of Apple, Red Bull, Spotify, Gucci, Lexus, and his work has been published and featured in the CBC, the Globe and Mail, Billboard, Vice, Toronto Life, National Post, and much more, and was on the cover on the Virgin Atlantic magazine. He photographed and traveled from Sri Lanka to Iceland and all over, has captured well-renowned images of various public figures like Demi Lovato, Natalie Portman, Selena Gomez, Kendrick Lamar, the Wu-Tang Clan, and the Rolling Stones, and much more. Ladies and gentlemen, we have Ryan Bolton here today. Ryan, how are you doing today, man?
Good, man. Thanks for having me, Yashu. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, man. Nah, it's just like a full circle moment right here and all that, you know, because I actually met you at Isolation Volume 1 and like just like seeing everyone have their work like all set up too, and then seeing like the Ugly Beautiful TO one, like it was like very interesting to see too with like some of the images with the strip club on Sherbourne and all that, you know, Galleria Mall, everywhere else too, and like just with all the other work as well too, and then reading the bio and then like seeing like the website, like it's like very amazing to see and all that, you know.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it was a pleasure to connect with you in the basement there. That was rad. But and that's kind of what I love about those like spaces. You know what I mean? Is the people you meet when you do stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, put yourself kind of have a show and Ugly Beautiful TO. So that was like a month-long show I had running through January at Twist Gallery, and then was part of Isolation there, which was a pleasure to be a part of. But I don't know, something about capturing the more uglier spaces of the city, or the places that people don't necessarily talk about as much, like as you're saying there, like Fillmore's or like Zanzibar. But there's a lot of beautiful aspects of the city that people don't always see. And it was an awesome show, and it was great to meet you there.
Yeah, not most definitely. And just like meeting you through Dawson, like was actually very like interesting to see too, because with him like organizing that event, like I think he's like maybe one of the younger ones that kind of like hosted the event too, and like seeing like everyone else too, it was like amazing to see and all that, and like interesting to like learn and all that from like other people as well too, and then just seeing your other podcasts, it was like interesting to hear. So I definitely want to like tap in more of your story for a bit too.
Let's do it, man. Let's do it.
All right. So where did you grow up, and what was like the environment like for you growing up? Would you say that your childhood was great, or would it be different?
Yeah. So I grew up in a small town called Hanover, Ontario. So it's like 2.5 hours outside of Toronto here. Like I always say, it's like heading towards like Port Elgin or Kincardine, like towards the water, and you just stop in a cornfield and give up. But it was a great community. Like I absolutely love. It's a small, so it's like Hanover is about 7,000 people total. Small town. A lot of like farming community. But not a tremendous amount going on in art scene. Let's be honest. I knew kind of from a young age. I knew when I was like going to go to college and university, something like that. I was probably looking for the city, and I just kind of knew I wanted to tell stories. To be honest with you, I didn't know I wanted to be a photographer or a writer or what back then necessarily. Like I was literally just like like skateboarding and basketball is what ruled my life. Like during high school, I did enough to get by and get enough grades here and there, but for me, it was more about like the social aspects and the people I met, and then skateboarding and trying not to hurt myself.
True. So from like birth until like, young adulthood and all that, it was just like kind of finding your identity in that sense too in a small town, just like even with the high schools and even with everything like that too. Because like I know like with small towns, it's like very like interesting in that sense.
Yeah, it can be homogenous, you know what I mean? It can be like the same. Like and for me, I just watching like pro basketball or pro that, like just seeing the city and like and seeing the life there, there's a lot more to it. And as a young person, I was kind of drawn to that. You know what I mean? I was drawn more just to different ways of seeing life. You know what I mean? Than what I was always seeing. I don't know. I was always kind of yearning for something a little more. And I think even with my job now, like adventure is the core of it. You know what I mean? Like not knowing what's going to be happening in 2 weeks. You know what I mean? I kind of love that, to be honest with you. And so I think maybe that was kind of it. Like, and I was actually back in my hometown this past weekend here for Easter, which was fantastic just to see family and friends. And the best part is that's still such a tight knit community, and will always be there. But for me, it's always kind of about what's behind that curtain, or what's behind that door, or what's behind that mountain.
Yeah, most definitely. But like even before you moved to Toronto, you've been to like Toronto like many times, and like what was like that aspect of the city like for you, like as a kid, like when you like noticed
Mhm.
it, like just
Mhm.
even like before moving and all that?
I like one of my favorite memories of first coming to the city. I probably was like 12, 13. I was coming here with my grandpa, and we came across when they had the ferry from Niagara Falls actually to Toronto, which no longer happens, but it was super rad. So you take like a ferry early morning, and I remember just coming to the city, and the whole goal was to go to the Hockey Hall of Fame. And I remember walking Yonge Street then too, and like just kind of drawn by the energy. You know what I mean? Like there's something like unexplainable about how much the city moves and the vibrancy and the
Yeah.
people. And I remember Grandpa after saying too, like you just had your neck craned towards the sky, looking at the
Yeah.
buildings the
Yeah.
whole time as well. Anyway, we had gotten like fake lost and stuff, and like he was like kind of like teasing me, but yeah, we ended up at like the Hockey Hall of Fame, and so I remember from a young age just like how I still kind of remember the smells, I remember the sights, I remember the sun, I remember the people on Young Street that would kind of like come up to you and like talk with you. Like I just still that energy was kind of something I'd never experienced before. So I think after seeing the city like that a couple times, I remember seeing it too when I was young to see like the Lion King and seeing the city at night too. Like the energy of that was kind of next level for me. And I still remember like seeing streetcars for the first time at night when you're like young. Like I don't know, there's something about it in the belt. Like it just that whole all the energy, the experience, the vibrancy. Like I've forever been chasing that. And once I got to the city, kind of I knew it was home. But
Yeah.
yeah, it definitely hit me from a young age, and I definitely remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, most definitely. And just getting into like the photography aspect in your life. So, what was like your first introduction to photography in that sense?
Yeah. So for the city for so city photography's always been important to me. And that's kind of what I always say. That's how I really learned the camera. So and when I talk about like some of my city photography, I'm talking about like long exposure stuff. So
Yeah,
setting on tripod and like
yeah,
being patient as hell, basically. But you're really learning how to use the camera properly, how much light you're letting
yeah,
in, how you're playing with aperture, and
yeah,
basically your exposure triangle. So it kind of taught me though, like the ins and outs of, one obviously composing a good shot because you're on a tripod and you're setting that one shot, but two, how to for instance, at nighttime, like letting in the light of a streetcar passing
yeah,
by or like the city lights and that kind of stuff. Like there's so much more to capture. And I think creatively, it just kind of opened up a whole new world for me
yeah.
in that light. And more my portrait photography actually started a little differently. So right out of university, I actually went to Ghana, Africa, and I was working with an organization called Journalists for Human Rights, which is still around. It's actually an amazing Canadian organization, basically about helping empower others with journalism in say places that don't necessarily have the means to get journalism out there and hold others accountable, which is something I really believe in. And so I was working at a library in Sierra Leonean refugee camp in Ghana called Buttaburum, and kind of fundamentally changed my life again. Where I was writing with the Journalists for Human Rights and the local journalists there, but I started taking photos and just started taking portraits of the people that I was reporting on and people I was reporting with, and just kind of the experience. And um, uh, yeah, editors here and there kind of started taking a little bit of notice, and I just kind of naturally liked it too because I could tell the written story, but I could also tell the photo story and kind of put it together and telling kind of a holistic story, which
Yeah.
I really love. But after coming back from that trip, I just started using the camera a little more to take portraits of friends and stuff. And in journalism too, that was part of it as well, where I was like, writing and taking photos and kind of experimenting with it. And it just started to kind of bleed more into my work generally until photography just kind of fully took over.
Yeah, most definitely. And like usually like around that time too, because like usually it was like Canon, Nikon, Panasonic and all that. So like what was like that body that you had at that time too? Like the first body and like the
Yeah.
lens like at the time
Yeah.
that you had?
Yeah. So I learned originally on a Canon AE1, so like an actual film camera that my mom
Oh,
had. I still have that camera and a couple other ones of those film cameras, which I still love. But I learned on a Canon Rebels,
oh true.
Canon T2Is, forget the other ones before that I was shooting with, but just basic Rebels. And the one thing that changed basically my game was I got a used Canon 5D Mark II
Oh true.
for $1,000. Got a Yorkdale Mall, just off some dude. This might have been, I don't know, 2014, 2015, somewhere in there. And so that was the difference of going from like a Rebel to like a full frame camera that you can kind of control. You control where your focus is and like a lot more
Yeah.
to it. I think they started doing some commercials and stuff with that kind of camera back in the day. Anyway, it just kind of changed my game. And I still actually shoot on Canon 5Ds. I've had the Mark from the Mark II to the Mark III. Now I have the Mark IV.
Yeah.
I'm going to go mirrorless, but I'm just not completely happy where Canon is right now in the mirrorless. I think it's gonna the R5 Mark II, the next one that's coming. I think that's gonna be the game changer. Yeah, just something about like something for me as a photographer too. When I'm like on a set or traveling or something like that, you just want that workhorse to work for you. You know what I mean? And those Canon 5Ds, man, like that's almost a perfect camera for me. Like it always I've had that thing on. From the glaciers in Iceland and in Alaska to sands of Morocco to the oceans of Sri Lanka. Like that thing has been around and it's the shutter's still going. So like something about if it's not broken, don't fix it. Yeah, that's where I'm at with my gear right now.
Yeah, most definitely, because I know with like the Mark Ones and Mark Twos and all that, because like they used to be very expensive back then, because you can never really find like a model like that. But then if you like try to purchase it, like maybe like in this year, it'll probably be like around like the 700s, like 800s for a bit too, just like either with the body or like a little bit more just with the body and like lens for a bit too. So it kind of changes over time on like how technology is like formed in that sense too. Like as you said, like with the Rebel series, like the T2s and all that, because like they were also APS-Cs, right?
Yep.
True.
Yep.
So
Yep.
like even like those transitions too, because like now it's like you can even like get that for like maybe like $90, $80, like in that sense. So
I bet, yeah, and those lenses. And here's the thing too, like for any young photographers or anybody, I recommend using cameras like that, honestly, like because for me it was about learning how to compose, and like I was saying earlier about the long exposures, how to actually properly use the camera. You know what I mean? And I'm talking about like manual mode here, right?
yeah.
Which kind of with a young, it's fun for me. It's kind of like a creative puzzle, figuring out a camera and a photo. Sometimes, you know what I mean. It's like the proper lighting, and then how to get the actual proper exposure, and how to get the most out of the person or the landscape, whatever you're working with. It's a puzzle, and it can always be improved.
Yeah, most definitely. I had Dustin just back then, like as I said, and he talked about like his main inspiration for photography was like mainly through music. So like mainly through like artists like Red Veil and like Denzel Curry and like everyone else too. But like in your aspect, who would you consider your main inspiration in terms of your creative journey?
Good question. Music is a huge part of what I do and who I am, for sure. And even photographing music, I used to shoot like Way Home Music Festival and Field Trip and shooting with the JUNO Awards and other artists. Like I'm just absolutely attached to that. But another big part of my inspiration, my creativity actually comes from skateboarding.
Oh, true.
Skateboarding photography as well. People like Atiba Jefferson and just like a different way of seeing our surroundings. And that was something with skateboarding with me from a young age as well, in a small town, was a different way of seeing maybe that stair set or that ledge, and a different way of kind of, expressing myself. But also the skateboarding photography that I saw was also different than a lot of mainstream ways and how they shot it. And even guys like Spike Jonze, like the, acclaimed movie director, he started actually with skate photography, which is really cool. He did these like flash long exposure stuff, and this is back in like I think like the early 90s with like girl films and stuff. But so skateboarding has always been a huge inspiration for me, and to be honest, just other art, I love seeing and meeting other artists and how they work and the process that goes into it. Sometimes with photography, kind of be a little bit of a lone wolf business, right? Like kind of out there in the streets or out there like photographing someone, but it's usually just kind of myself, and seeing how other people, like from videographers to other photographers, do their work and their craft always brings me inspiration. Just kind of just seeing how they put things together, how they see things or what they see, and how they different angles. I think that's good for everybody, especially for a photographer's eye, just to see it a different way. You know what I mean? Or I'm always looking to like even on my Instagram page, like I don't do just one style like that. I find people get put in a box, or just doing long exposure, just doing portraits, or just doing travel, or what have you. It's like that's not for me. You know what I mean? Like as a photographer, I like to see kind of how everything's moving, and I honestly like want a little bit in each one of those pools and to play within it, because I find it makes my other work a little stronger, because just different ways of seeing it. And then I feel like kind of learning good long exposure photography can blend really well to maybe doing some cool camera tricks with commercial stuff, or really good portrait stuff can bleed really well with shooting a group or whatever it may be. But I always find like one thing kind of leads to another, and just as a photographer, like being open to different ways of doing things is a good thing, and being inspired by other people doing that is even better thing.
Yeah, no, for sure. Because like when you talked about like skating too for a bit, especially like the OG like girl films and everything like that, I think like one person that mainly played a role was like Stacy Peralta, like with his filming and like the way he captured like some stuff, and like his influence today has been like long exposed for people, like even like in the Fug series, like with Tony Hawk Underground, like where he had like a major part and like him giving advice to that player are right there too. So it could even be evident like with how you see like certain films and all that, because like now some kids, they're still using like the old like camcorders and all that to kind of get like that good image and all that, and
Yeah,
like
dude. The
even with
GX1000s, yeah, those are everywhere, and those are expensive now too.
yeah
And you get them all custom made. They're
yeah
like Nike
yeah
Dunks now of
yeah.
camcorders.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
some people are like still using that, for video releases and to even like
Yep.
get like promo and all that. And like
Yep.
I think like skating has never really died in that sense too. Like it kind of like just evolved, but
Mhm.
you don't really see people being influenced by like the skaters as much anymore, but more so like the aura and like the essence of it, like in that sense too. So like I think like skating has played like a huge role like in many things.
Totally, man.
Yeah.
Totally. In culture too. People don't
Yeah.
really see how much in culture like that's been a part of it. Like even guys like Pharrell, right? Like he comes
Yeah.
from like skate culture. He's one of the biggest producers in the
Yeah.
flipping world. And
Yeah.
he, comes from like skateboarding background with like NERD. Like, yeah, man, skate culture is everywhere. And like of course, like Tony Hawk Pro Skater and like games like that have been part of it. But I think more and yeah, from music to clothing to
Yeah.
style to like who if you walk down the street, you're gonna see a couple Thrasher sweaters. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
Yeah.
that's part of the culture.
Yeah.
And I still love how it like even now like going like I still go to the skate park. I skate with a bunch of buddies. We call ourselves like old man
Yeah.
skate crew. But it's just like one of those things too. We're just seeing like the young blood like come up and doing just the same way of learning about something, the persistence that it takes.
Yeah.
And I think that's great creatively as well. Like I think who is it? It's like Seinfeld has a joke who's like those skateboarder kids they're gonna be all right, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I saw a couple of them jumping
Yeah.
down a 10 set the other day, and they fell and they bounced right back up and they kept going again. Like those kids are gonna be all right. And it's like there's truth to that.
Yeah,
There really is.
exactly.
Like you learn through pain. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But you also get to creatively it's a creative outlet as well for a lot of people, and myself included, and I hope it remains. Yeah.
No, it's definitely. So, Ugly Beautiful Tio, it wasn't like your first project, like is that correct? Or
Yeah, I've done other gallery shows before.
true.
So I've worked a lot with like Analog Gallery here in the city. They do like rock and roll photography. So
true.
I've done like sound image with them for years. And shout out to Lucia, she's amazing. So yeah, I've had stuff like it's like Gord Downey photos, Yaz, Banks. Then I've done wedding photography shows
true.
with Scarlett O'Neill. For a few years. I don't think she's doing it right now, but gallery shows. But then this was Ugly Beautiful Tio was my first like, and it was all long exposure Toronto photography, but it was my first kind of idea of how to capture the city as a street photographer in a different way and making it a show. So in that sense, yeah. It was honestly like amazing, just like for me as well. Again, from coming from like the lone wolf of just going out and photographing the city, and I've been doing this for years. With like places like blogTO and stuff too, which has been just fun for just doing and showcasing the city, but to kind of say something about the city in a way that kind of a little bit of a love letter. That was kind of the whole focus of what I wanted to do as well. With the city can be many things to many different people, good or bad, and I would just hope people when they have like bad experience with the city, like there's like the positives as well that might be around the next corner. And to find kind of the beauty, and especially after a couple of hard years of pandemic in the city too, which I definitely photographed. Kind of this is more kind of let's go again, a little bit of a resurgence, showing the vibrancy and the life that the city has.
Yeah, most definitely. And like that process, because it was like a month-long process of you taking photos and all that, and like starting from scratch. So, how was like that process like? Until like that project was complete in that sense too. Like, was it like something that you've clearly like recognized like in all formats in that sense too, or was it like something that you might have expected like in that sense?
Yeah, the process kind of started organically. Like I knew like the idea of Ugly Beautiful To happened maybe like what 2 years ago. Just kind of as a way to kind of piece together again, showing kind of the darker corners of the city, the uglier corners, and a more aesthetically pleasing glow was about 2 years ago, and then just kind of started working on it. And kind of piecing it together in different like kind of spots. Like I had, for instance, like Dufferin Mall, mapped out how I wanted to shoot it, and I got this perfect foggy night. And then there's like a cyclist coming by, and there's like a utility vehicle with this
Yeah.
lights on. It was like kind of just perfect framing, and those. So I'd actually shot that shot maybe 2 other times before that, but just kind of didn't get what I wanted. And the third iteration it worked. You know what I mean? So sometimes that would be part of it. Like I'd have a place scoped out that I wanted to be a part of it. Sneaky D's was a part of
Yeah.
that too. especially with like rumors of condos and this and that. And it's
Yeah.
like I don't want to lose those places that for me were very like transformational almost. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
an essence of my younger years, like 20s in the city, and kind of discovering that those corners. So for me, it was kind of one documenting that too, but also showcasing the coolness of all those
Yeah.
places as well for other people to see it, especially at night, because a lot of people don't actually get to experience the
Yeah.
city. I find at night, you know what I mean. It
Yeah.
does have a different vibe, a different feel, and yeah, just kind of showcasing it. So and then what was it? It was last October that Twist Gallery, which is like a Queen Street gallery, originally reached out and said, "Hey, you want to be part of our new show? It's happening in January." And it kind of all came together perfectly because I had been working on this project and I was down. So yeah, it just kind of happened organically in
True.
that sense. And then a month later, yeah, Dawson reached out for isolation, and I was like, yeah, let's keep this ball rolling, and did another showing, and yeah, it was sweet, man.
Yeah, most definitely. And like that impact from that project, like, so how was like that impact like when the project was available for people to see and witness? Have
Mhm.
you ever like received like any recognition or criticism or other feedback from others who managed to see those photographs too in that sense? Or
Oh yeah, it was all positive mainly, and like I remember like talking to friends at the beginning too. Like I didn't actually do this to sell. Like wasn't the goal wasn't to sell anything, to be honest. It was more of, like I was saying, showcasing the beauty of the
not
city,
true.
but two, just to be a part of a cool group of people. Like some of the photographers I met, like Angel, who was also part of the show, like a young film photographer that shoots like car photography that goes out to LA and California, and
Yeah.
just like a really talented raw dude. And coming back to like what I was saying too, but like inspiration from other places, like
Yeah.
just different way of like photographing and going about it, but just such beautiful work that I was so drawn to. And then we had the opening night, and like that was it for me. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
we had hundreds of people coming out just to see good work and kind of celebrate the city. And that for me is the magic, man. Like that, like just having like good, and I always like, my favorite thing about the city too is mixing different friend groups and different like background. Like, you know what I mean? I love that
Yeah.
because like you get different people
Yeah.
talking, and like that's where like the magic happens for
Yeah.
me. You know what I mean? Like I think that's the whole thing Steve Jobs had, right? He said when they were building the Pixar headquarters, they built spaces that people would meet in, right? Like you'd have like an engineer meeting with a graphic designer or something, and like, an idea would come across, and it's like that's such a
Yeah.
beautiful
Yeah.
thing. And
Exactly.
I think at a gallery setting with a bunch of people coming out to celebrate art in the city, you meet interesting people in that route. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like you're one of them, so there you go. But
Yeah.
that for me, like just seeing all those people out and celebrating, and yeah, that just like that for me is the best
Yeah,
in the
no,
world.
most definitely.
Yeah.
Because like I know like there was like some performances later on at the isolation one. I know 808 Mazi, I think he was supposed to perform too for a bit. I kind of like left, but I saw like from the reels that like animation performed and like a whole lot of other people like performed and all that. So it was kind of interesting how they kind of merged it into a concert and like photo
Hmm.
gallery too in that sense. So it's
Hmm.
pretty interesting to see in that sense.
That was yeah, the isolation one. That was sweet because I remember when I went for a drink with a buddy like after like a lot of the show was going on, and it came back, and it was a whole show, and I was like, this is awesome. Like, it was
Yeah.
just so wild. I remember just gonna be kind of like
Yeah.
awestruck, and it was good too, and like it was good like circle of like
Yeah.
kids, and like that energy. I remember that energy was raw
Yeah.
too. Like yeah, that was kicking actually. So exactly, like that's kind of cool thing. You bring cool people together in a cool like in a space, and stuff like that happens organically. You know what I mean? And all good energy, like good vibes, like good people. And shout outs to Dawson too for just doing stuff like that too. Like it's hard to like bring people together. It's hard to put yourself out there. It's hard to like plan events. You know what I mean? And sometimes it can be thankless as hell too. You know what I mean? Like doing like putting yourself out there. A lot of people don't. It's easy to sorry. What I'm trying to say is it's easy to critique somebody from a basement.
Yeah.
It is. It's another thing to go out and publicize and
Yeah.
throw a show and have exactly multimedia performances and art and from different backgrounds too. Like that's I think they had bubble tea. They had bubble tea there. They had
Yeah.
different like food. Yeah, and like that's where it's at. Like
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
that's where it's at. The intersection of good people, good art, creativity, and a cool space.
So
Yeah, that was at Messy House, Toronto. That was like in Parkdale there. So yeah, shout out.
Not pretty much. But take it back to like your first project in that sense too. So we've talked about Ugly Beautiful to Yo, but like when we take it back to like the very first project that you took upon, like what was like that project that you worked on, and what was that experience like? Working on that piece, and, like seeing the impact once it was like finally released in that sense.
For like photography?
I'd say so.
Yeah, first project. Been a few. Let's go with something like maybe like the JUNO Awards, for instance. So I started shooting with them at the Ottawa show in 20, I want to say 2016, 2017, somewhere in there. And that's a whirlwind, something like that, right? So the JUNO Awards itself is like a 1 day celebration of art, but leading up to it's actually like a week long project where they actually have everything from comedy shows to like it's like a charity ice hockey game. There's JUNO fanfare. There's actually gala. So there's like so many different events going into creating, celebrating the best music in the city in the country. But I remember the first time getting out there and starting to shoot, and the amount of work that you can put on yourself it can be so exhausting, man. Like trying to keep up pace with
Yeah.
everything that you're like, it's on a shot list, for instance. And then let's say like the weather's bad or this, that. What you quickly learn is how to work through bad scenarios. And how to make things that may not, you know what I mean? Like taking something that's bad and making it as good but like sticking to what you're trying to do in that time frame. You learn a lot quickly about yourself under pressure, how to shoot, yeah, how to shoot with bad lighting, how to shoot with good lighting, how to shoot with too many like people in a crowd. Like there's so much to learn about, just how to operate and get in there. But when you see, I remember like at the end of that weekend, like the photos that come out of something like that, and the JUNO Awards like printed a bunch of those and hung those, and then I remember at the next year's show. They actually had some like large banners of like my work there, and it's like it's all worth it. You know what I mean? After that, it's like you put in so much pain and banging your head against the wall, and sometimes the shot doesn't work out, but you look back at it and you go, damn, you know what I mean? Or like it made a difference or this or that, and it was cool. Like so, just shot this year's JUNO Awards last month at Edmonton. It was amazing, man. Like I didn't know this was happening, but when we got into the airport at Edmonton, when you landed, the Junos had a huge like JUNO sign, like 5 feet tall, whatever, it was massive. But it was one of my photos blown up to make the letters. Like it was the photo was like the letters of the Junos, and that was like the welcome to the airport sign that people were taking photos with, and it's like amazing. You know what I mean? Like that kind of brings it all together, where it's like all that hard work, all that stress, all this and that. But then there's rock stars taking photos next to that sign, or young kids or what doesn't matter, what have you, to represent, the Junos coming to Edmonton. I was like that, stuff like that makes it all worth it, man. And especially, I think we were kind of talked about it a bit, but the people you meet somewhere like at the backstage of the Junos or the events leading up to it, man, like I'm like jazzed up for a good week and a half after that, which is good vibes about, the people I met and the, the connections, and a couple of them too, like, we're going to do some photo projects together with some different people here and there. And it's like, yeah, man, like all about connection, all about good people. And, good people beget good people, and good work begets good work,
Yeah, most definitely. Like, I don't remember, I think for this year at the Junos, sorry about that. There was like this one crazy incident that kind of made the news and all that. Like, I think it's like self-explanatory. The green belt girl that came at Avril's set, and then Avril just told her to F off and all that.
Yeah, live. Yeah. Yeah.
So how did you react to that and all that?
Yeah, man, that was actually pretty shocking. So I was like perfectly stationed, right. So it's just like the main satellite stage is like right here, and like there's like I'm like 20 feet away, and it's funny because I saw it all happening too as she was kind of coming up. She just came up on the stage, took off her top, and like walked on the stage. The wild thing is that Avril didn't notice right at the beginning, so kind of walked behind and was doing her protest. And for me, I like everybody, it was kind of shock at first. Like I didn't know if this was part of the show or what was happening, and I just was starting to shoot, and then I just heard all of the cameras beside me just, and like, of course, like this something is happening right now, and just started shooting like crazy. That's all I remember. But yeah, and then good for it was peaceful, and Avril, she might have cursed on live TV, but handled it well herself, and everything kind of was smoothed over. Which is good too, but you never know, like when it's live television and stuff like that, anything can happen,
Yeah.
for sure. It can definitely happen, but I'm happy everything was peaceful.
Yeah.
And there's no major incident
Yeah,
there.
because I think they might have used some images, you know, for the CTV and like CBC like headlines and all that. So like I
Yeah.
don't know if you kind of noticed that by any chance.
Yeah, I think I got some international play too. Like the BBC
Yeah.
picked it up, and a couple
Yeah.
like maybe in the States here and
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, because it was kind of like the equivalent of like the whole Will Smith, Simon Crusoe rock type thing, but it was kind of like a diet light type thing. But you know, because it wasn't really a celebrity that did that. It was just some random girl came
Yeah.
by, did that,
Yeah.
told her to F off, and you know, it was
Yeah.
just from there, you know?
Yep. And protesting something that I think a lot of us do care for too.
Yeah.
Some of it was the green belt here in Ontario, and then I think it was the old growth forest in BC. Yeah.
Definitely. So like I know that you dabbled onto journalism, photography for a bit, like after working in Ghana for a bit. But how did you get into the concert photography like aspect? You know, like outside of like the Junos, and what was that experience like shooting so many concerts and festivals like Way Home and like some other festivals like Oshiega and like all that type of stuff? You know, for the publications that you worked for in that sense.
Yeah. So a lot of it, the early days was through blogTO, which back in the day, like that was the best, and really kind of carried a name too. Like we could kind of go to any show. Like I remember like shooting like Virgin Fest on the islands back in the day, and Festival. Those are always so fun. And yeah, any like concert photography that kind of came through the city, and like just having that media accreditation pass also kind of like opened up my eyes a lot too. Just to what you can do with a camera and what you can do with media is powerful. And there's something, again, kind of bringing back the music of inspiration. Like it just kind of, man, I don't know, good music just moves me. Like I just kind of, that's where it's at for me. I've always loved music and always will love music. And to kind of bring some photography to it, like I'll never stop. I think like I just love the two mediums coming together, because you can kind of get those timeless shots. Like for instance, I got to shoot like the Rolling Stones last show that was here in Canada at Burroughs Creek. It was like, I think it was like 2019. They had 70,000 people there, man, and like getting some of those wide crowd shots. 70,000 people, fireworks, Rolling Stones. Half a year before pandemic.
Yeah.
like they'll never, like, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
70,000 people in one place. And like I was like, this is a moment, you know what I mean? You're there to photograph it, and like you to get those photos, like that's pretty legendary, And I'm always kind of awestruck sometimes by like the opportunities that I get for those things, where it's like you're photographing something that could go down in history. Like even sure the JUNO Protest right there. Like there you go. Like that's something that will probably be remembered for a few years here, and like that's something. But the music for me, like, always, I remember shooting Kendrick Lamar for the first Way Home, for instance, and like, dude, the energy that guy carries on one guy on a huge stage in front of thousands of people, like raw, and that photo pit was wild too. I still remember there's a lot of cameras in that photo pit. But yeah, I'll always be looking towards music photography, and I think it's cool too. Like a lot of like Dawson, for instance, he does a lot of street photography, and then he does a lot of like music photography too. Like kind of like you can kind of see that connection a lot with photographers for sure.
Exactly, because like even with those like free songs too, like when you're at like that pit, like with the free songs and like like just respecting the pit too for a bit, just like recognizing that there's other people around. It's interesting to see like on what you could do with like free songs and that and all that too, like even like with the images and all that, because there is like iconic stuff that you can get with free songs and all that, but then others who stay like for the show for so long and all that, like as the official like photographer, like it can be interesting on like what images that you can like get from there and all that, so.
Totally, man. And like to be honest with you too, and like to that point, like with photography, and I'll always say this to young bucks that are like looking to make a name: push boundaries.
Yeah.
Always look to push boundaries. You're gonna get 3 songs. Take your 3 songs. Be respectful. Get out of the photo pit. But there's still ways you can maybe get some shots here and there. That's being respectful, unless the performer or whatever say like no other professional shots after or whatever. But like try to get some wides. Try to get like move around a little bit. See what you can do after those 3 songs. Like get creative, because exactly another moment might happen. Like something might happen too that like you're gonna miss out on. That you're gonna be out of there, and like something else could have happened. Like for instance, like Nav just performed and Travis Scott came up. You know what I mean? Like you're gonna miss that with a camera. Like damn, like shit, you're gone. You know what I mean? Like again, like for photographers and someone looking to come up, like be respectful, don't break laws, but push the boundaries. That's how you get photos, man. Like, yeah, like going a little more old school, actually. Like, so I shot like the G20 here in Toronto that happened back in 2010, which is a fucking disaster through and through. Like, that's when cop cars are upside down and this and that. And, but I remember photographing some of that stuff too in the city and being like, damn, you know what I mean? Like, behind, like I remember one point we were behind like police lines too, and like I'm like, what? Like I was kettled behind where like you couldn't get back to the street, and being like, but I had my camera and it's like, like trying to capture those stories and tell those stories because other people probably aren't going to hear that story. You know what I mean? Or showcase what you're seeing. I think there's a power to also use media to showcase the good things. But coming back, yeah, with music, man, like the 3 songs, you got to know what to do. Another little tip there. I remember I learned with like shooting music photography from like a senior photographer was if you already got the shot of like that one performer, like say leaning over to the crowd, getting that, if you got that shot, move on. Get the next shot, move around, like give another photographer that angle or whatever. Like once you get one good shot, like look at the next ones. You have to, again, the creative problem solving comes into play there, where you gotta, think outside the box, try different things out, and I think you'll be rewarded when you do it.
Almost definitely. Because I know with G22, like they had to put like many people in like detention centers and all that, and
Yeah, man.
there was only like maybe like one toilet for like maybe 40 or 50 people like in one cell and all that. So
Yep.
I don't know if like no photographer, like if any photographers or any like people in the media were like arrested or anything like that, or
Oh, I think there definitely was. I got close. I got really close. Uh, we were with CP24 and CTV at the time, and one of the producers came and grabbed me because there was a nondescript man that was actually police that when forget what happened. There was some reason there would be waves and waves of people running all the time, man. It was just chaos. But he came and he was going to kind of arrest me. And one of the producers stopped him. Like I literally just was on the ground. Like I remember it was right at like Bay and college and university, like right there. Yeah, it was like terrifying. But you also like you still want to get those stories. I remember seeing people getting like pepper sprayed. They were shooting people with like those beanbag pellet things at night. The one night, like it was a gnarly time. But again, like using photography to show those stories. I think I wrote for that on that one with blogTO too. Like, yeah, man, that stuff definitely. Seeing cop car on fire is something you're not used to on Toronto streets for sure.
Yeah, not for sure. Because I know like even too like there was like people like I saw like this one video back then where people were singing like "Oh Canada," like the protesters, and then once it came to like the end, "Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee." You see like every cop just like dashing them like throughout the way, and like some people couldn't like even get through to like the far end, so like some people were captured too. So it was kind of crazy to see like at that time too, because like now when you look at protests too, it went from G20 protests where people that actually had a cause were getting like bullied like all the way to the end and then getting arrested, to now like with the whole like COVID protests with like those anti-vaxxers having permission with the police to go all over like downtown for a bit, like in 2020, like 2021, 2022, like with no arrests or anything like that. And like even with Ottawa too, it's kind of crazy,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Been some messed up times for sure in that sense.
Yeah, sure. So getting back onto like your growth as a photographer, so from working with your first piece to working with to working with the Junos to working on Ugly Beautiful TO, do you feel you've grown as a photographer and that you've came a long way in that sense?
Oh, for sure, dude, for sure. And the way for me too is like I was kind of saying earlier, but like the whole thing is like experimenting and it's trying new things. It's looking for different ways of being creative too. Will never end for me. I hope like I think that's what I'm most driven by is just creative storytelling. I'm doing some more like video stuff now too. Like I did like a music video with Manila Gray down in Mexico on a trip I was just on in November, and I was kind of just just attached to that, you know what I mean? And just, shooting that was so fun. So for me, photography and growth, man, like they go hand in hand. And I think any photographer sees that. Like you see that sometimes on Instagram where people like will share like the first photo they took as a photographer and like where the photography is now. Like that's a cool thing because you learn as you go. And even things like now, like I have my own photo studio now in the Junction, and like I use that place to constantly creatively experiment too, like different ways of of shooting with light, different ways of just doing portraits in there, screwing up, getting good stuff. Like it's a place to experiment. That's how I see it. And in getting to a place now that I have a studio like that, I think that was a lot of the hard work leading up to that too. You know what I mean? Like that was all just part of the business that I was in, and how to build it. To have experimenting as kind of the, to be honest, like the crux. I think that's kind of the main thing. I love meeting people. And I love trying to get good photos of people, and it's a challenge every time.
No,
Yeah.
exactly, man. And getting into the whole like brand aspects right now, you've worked with like Apple, Red Bull, Virgin, like Atlantic, and like everywhere else too. So like working with all these brands, like what was that experience and feeling like? Like just working with all these like companies, and seeing your work being all over like these various like major brands and like publications. Like, has it like ever like changed for you in that sense?
No, and again, I'm always like awestruck when brands they want it, But like, I think with brands too, like, it's about connecting with people that want to tell a similar story, or help tell a story too. There's greatness in that. And for me, I like to work with like brands too that like to take some of those, like Red Bull, for instance. Like, I love how they storytell and do things their own way too. And who thought like an energy drink would have the best like F1 team in the world right now over like things like Mercedes and Ferrari, which are legendary brands. But brands that take some risks in their storytelling, I love it. I'm drawn to it. And I think too, like using different creative ways of showcasing stories or products or what have you too will always be there, And I think and I'm lucky and I'm fortunate. I think one of the things too with working with brands is being authentic, man. Like just who you are, what you can bring to the table, and how you shoot, but just being a real person, at the
Yeah.
same time, and being and having kind of a collaborative spirit. Like that's again coming back to the lone wolf photography. I like to work with other people. I like to collaborate. I like to be on a set. I like to make something that like I didn't you have an idea of that day, but when you get to that final shot, you're like, damn, something to be proud of, or like
Yeah.
something that's going to be, be used on a billboard or used in an ad. Like what that's cool, and that's an achievement as well. And for me, and something with commercial, it's definitely collaboration. Like
Yeah.
working with brands to get there. Like, we just got the flights booked to going to France in 2 weeks.
True.
It's amazing. It's like in Paris and then the south
Yeah.
of France with Saint Germain, the liqueur. And I haven't worked with them before, but like the trip itself sounds, bonkers. And I'm just excited to go for the adventure and to see what we're going to capture. You know what I mean? And I think we have some press with us as well, which will be cool. But like again, for me, it's just like, here's what's going to happen. Like I only like to know like the loose things, and then let's go capture it. As best as we can, and authentic as we can. Like that's still a big part of it. And of course, there's always a little bit of tricks here and there, but I like to be just creative, experiment, and collaborative in how I work with brands, and I hope others, other brands too, like see that, and I do say no to other brands too that I don't maybe feel that they're a right fit for me, or they don't maybe stand for something I don't fully believe in. I think for young photographers too, that is something as you learn your style, as you learn your work. For me, it was a teacher that just said, know your principles, like know
Yeah.
your photography principles, but also your human principles. Like what kind of work do you want to do?
Yeah.
What do you want to stand for? What do you want it to say? I think when you have those things figured out, it makes it easier what you're going to say yes to and no to. And again, I know I'm speaking with some experience. So with young, up and comers, like taking opportunities as they come is always a good thing for sure, and being open to them. But having principles as you do it, I think will also help you in the long run.
Yeah, most definitely. And with in terms of like finding like that right client, like I know that you said like just having everything prepared, like the location, everything like with the setup and like just with organization, with payment, like that's very important. But are there like other things that you look for like in a client?
Yeah, how they've treated past
Yeah.
photographers, you know what I mean? Like in the network, and you hear it. You hear it
Yeah.
if someone's not being treated well, or they're hard to work with. You know what I mean? Or wasn't doing something like fuck it, like Vice back in the day, like they were the worst to pay anyone. And they knew it because they had a name, and stuff like that. And it's like, all right, well, I'm not going to put my attention necessarily with you. You know what I mean? Like stuff like that. Like, and, there's some of the best storytellers out there. I know their brand has been hurt, but stuff like that does get back. It does. Like it totally gets back. Versus publications or brands that pay not yeah, they pay what they can that is, at least respectful of the artist and looking for relationships that are respectful. I think that's what you want too, like how you're going to be treated. And with photography, like I was saying too, it's all and videography, it's all about preparation, right? Like all the work you put into something. So when you get to the day, you have the right lenses, the right lights,
Yeah,
the right
exactly.
whatever. It's already done. Like the work now is just
Yeah.
taking the shot. So yeah, I'd say no to like probably like smoking brands. I'd say no to like brands that like um
Are not like in the right image, in inappropriateness, like like with
yeah.
porn and all that other type of stuff.
Sure, yeah, for sure, for sure. Or like, yeah,
Yeah,
just like, yeah, like, or just someone that like, for me, honestly, it's like brands that just want to tell stories differently, a little
yeah,
more
exactly.
creative, and like to work with artists. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like that's also kind of cool to see as well. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Because like when you mentioned Vice too, it was interesting too because I read that there was a situation where one of the journalists, I think Slava P, I think he got arrested for some
he was the
connection.
cocaine guy,
Yeah,
wasn't? Yeah,
yeah. So it's kind of interesting like how Vice has like changed for a bit too, like in terms of their regimen and like having people like in their office and their workspace and all that too, and then just with the content that they put out. So it's kind of interesting on how some people don't like prefer to work with brands like that in that sense.
yeah, too, and like for them too is always like kind of looking for that like. And what I liked about Vice was they were trying to tell real stories. Sometimes it just got inauthentic. You know what I mean? Like it just was just trying to find the bottom of the hole. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
exactly.
And report on it like that. That's only going to lead you to one place sometimes. Yeah, like yeah. But what is it's cool too because like a brand like that, like I remember at the very beginning, like could say a lot and definitely shook up mainstream media. But what's the longevity of something like that? I guess we're kind of seeing it play out. Yeah.
Exactly, man. I've actually had this question for a bit too for a while, and I've asked this for like many people too. There was like a situation where there was like this Toronto music videographer by the name of David Del Rosario that said that he was gonna quit, videography because of the treatment that he dealt with like a lot of like Toronto artists like in the city and all that in terms of expecting the work to be for free and all that. Like I remember
Mm-hmm.
like there was this post where this one rapper said, "Yo, broski, can you give me like the video for like free and all that like when I get out?" And like it kind of had that incentive to have him like quit for a bit too because in that aspect it's not worth it to work with like budgets like that. But in your situation, like in any given situation where a person asks you for your services and they either request to work with a reduced budget or if they want their services for free, how would you handle that situation? And were there ever like times or situations that happened to you in that sense?
Yeah, for sure. Oh yeah, people are always looking to skim budgets. So
Yeah.
first off, I actually have like a three red flag rule. So that's when I'm like just like going back and forth with somebody on like say like a query or like trying to like there's actually for a quote or something like that. Yeah, usually budget will be the first one, and like it depends um, where the ball is falling. But what I'll usually say is if there is a set budget, then I just change the scope, right? So you're not getting like if you're looking for 4 hours, here's typically what the cost would be for the time and editing, say depending on what it is. And if they can't hit that, then we change the scope, maybe go down to 1 hour or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
So working with their budget, but then if they hit that three flag rule, another one, just like how they maybe the tone of the email or again how they've treated a past friend or a client, whatever
Yeah.
that kind of gets back to me. Hit those three flags, I'm not working with you. Like just because it's to that videographer, I don't know their experience personally, but oh yeah, man, that's realistically, and that'll tear you down for sure, absolutely. And for me, again, kind of coming back to that respect thing, it's like how you want to be treated, and to be honest, some of those their persistence on getting for free, then I ghost, like you know what I mean? Like, bye bye. Like, because that's not respectful. It's just not.
Yeah.
It's just not. It's not
Yeah.
at all. Like, and here's the thing. Like, up and coming artists, like you gotta hustle. Like, I get that. Like, I flip and get that, man. Like, and it's real, and the hustle is real, and a lot of people aren't gonna make it. But um, I think respect is a good way
Yeah.
of at least getting your foot in the door to get there. At
Yeah,
least, you know what I
exactly.
mean?
Yeah.
Like to start it. So that's usually how I'll handle it, and just trying to be respectful. And that's it too. At the end of the day, mate, I'm running my own business
Yeah,
too. You know what I
exactly.
mean?
Yeah.
Like, and I have a family, but also like I have assistants and other people that are
Yeah,
part
no,
of
exactly.
that I'm also like
Yeah.
working with and supporting. So for me, it's a business decision. It's not personal. You know, are we gonna help our friends when they need help? Yeah, hell yeah, of course we are. But like, yeah, free stuff here and there. Next.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Just gonna reduce some of the questions up for a bit too, because I think we've already spoke more about those. But in terms of gentrification right now, do you feel that gentrification, like, and the change of cost of living, has ruined Toronto in that sense?
Ruin's a tough word. It's definitely changed it, man. Yeah, definitely
Yeah.
changed it. Even like part of Ugly Beautiful TO, like I kind of do a couple pieces on Young Street because
Yeah.
Young Street I thought was a really good showcase of how much the city has changed. Because like again, when I was like younger, it's like that was all the weird, zany, independent
Yeah.
shops. You know what I mean? Like some strange shops on Young, but like a lot of independence, and those are gone, man. The city's gutted in that way. Or yeah, like even the entertainment district, which is completely different and busted up now. It's changed, man. Like so I'm in the Junction now, which I absolutely love that area. I love West Toronto, but seeing like local like friends, artists that
Yeah.
are moving to Hamilton and other um, cities is tough, dude.
Yeah.
And that's for me where I see, the changing of culture. It happens in those scenarios, where you have such good young and upcoming talent in the city that can't access it or
Yeah.
can't get into, say, like, yeah, like a
Like a big establishment, like, like a mod
yeah,
club or like a
yeah.
Phoenix or Rebel. Yeah, no,
Sh
I definitely
you
understand.
gotta
Yeah.
hustle, and it's expensive, and
Yeah.
that's a big part of the
Yeah.
whole game now, man, like, and I do worry for, like, up and comers, like, it's not easy at all, and I think one thing too, like, you know, having side hustles and other ways to propel your creativity is good, like, you're gonna make it happen. You're gonna make it happen. Like you keep working on it, but it's not easy, and the city has not made it
Yeah.
easy. I'll 100% agree with that. And
Yeah.
I had an old boss that eloquently and kind of glibly said, cities change, get used to it, and he's right. Like there's truth to that. Cities do change, but I think they should change with the youth in mind.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They should change with um, who's going to be the future people
Yeah.
running the city maybe in mind now. Like
Yeah.
sometimes the city doesn't there's no forethought into its planning, you know what I mean? Like we're seeing that, with a lot of the city, but even like Scarborough and like the connecting, like something like that was so delayed and it's been
Yeah.
so delayed. Like things that
I could say like Jane and Finch too, because like it's still like the same place even like after all these years too. Because like you would have thought like they would have gotten like upgrades, but they just started getting upgrades right
mhm,
now with like some of the areas too, and like even like in that sense too, with some places like every Starbucks that you used to go to, it's like now like a weed store and all that. Like some music venues that used to be iconic back then, like the Government and like Silver Dollar. Like the Government's like now like a condo based area,
mhm,
and then like the
yep.
Silver Dollar, it's not, it's like more so a reduced aspect of what it used to be like before. So it kind of has like changed in that sense too, with what you see right now and like who's the typical person living like in that city, because more so in downtown it's people coming from different countries or like different areas that are like staying right there, versus where it was back then, where it was mainly people who were born here and others who lived in Canada for a while. Like now they've moved all the way to Milton or to
Mm.
like Barrie, like in that sense too,
Mhm,
so
mhm. Yeah, it's definitely spreading it out and pushing people necessarily out of the city. Um, yeah, like, and I don't know the lasting effects of that too. Like, yeah, what does it mean when you don't have a lot of young, and again, from my angle, like, artists, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
people that necessarily aren't going to have as much money or resources. That's tough because exactly you lose things too, like that like isolation, like as an event, you know what I mean? Like if you're not having young people in the city, you're not having shows like that, and and I guess good for other cities like yeah, like Hamilton or other places where they're getting pushed out to, like those scenes will hopefully be vibrant, and I think it's always good to like change is good in a lot of ways, but I don't definitely don't support people getting pushed out,
yeah, exactly.
especially too with like creativity. Like if you, in a lot of ways, if you want to be in the scene, you got to be here. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like
exactly.
in Toronto's like video, like our cinema scene is blowing up. Like we're getting more and more studios now. Like it's good. Like that's great. Like there's money in that game, but I just hope it kind of comes down to the youth for sure.
Yeah, no, exactly. Do you feel like it has like lost the identity too in that sense with Toronto, as it was before versus like now,
Mm.
like with like the booming EDM scene, with like a lot of like clubs and people going out to like art events, to now it's where like people are just only going home to their condos, just kind of just
Mm.
watching Netflix or just eating out and all that, like that's kind of like the new norm.
Yeah, no, wait, you're definitely right. I think the pandemic has a part of that for sure, man, for sure. Like, I don't know, the cool thing about Toronto still, like, having having been able to travel is it's an international city, right? Like it's got and it's with people like Drake and The Weeknd, like really have brought great international recognition to the city and the arts and what we have to offer. And I think, like you just said, like music is definitely a big, huge export of what we do here and the creativity that we have. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to answer that, to be honest. Like there's definitely been a change post pandemic, 100%. Like even I remember I did a project too when the in the middle of the pandemic, like maybe March 2021, I went out and photographed all the closed stores on Queen first. I
Oh,
did
sure.
all of Queen West, like from Parkdale to like Much Music. And it was devastating, man. Like, it was just seeing all the closed stores, like, in Independence, like, that's what Queen was anyway. And, then I did it on Bloor, and then I did it on, like, the Danforth and the East End and St. Clair, and, that was a hard one to do because all the vibrancy of the independent stores were kinda gone, and that's kinda one of the best parts of the
Yeah,
city,
exactly.
that we've always had is that independent spirit, and, yeah, you see more, Starbucks and, vape shops and Rexall pop up
Yeah.
every freaking corner. It definitely has an approach, but I also like, kind of like a good little brush fire, sometimes you need to burn out some of the old stuff for the new stuff to come up or the
Exactly.
regrowth. I just hope it's affordable and possible for youth as well.
Yeah.
Like even coming back to the photo studio I just started
Yeah.
in the Junction Studio 201. The one of the main things for it is we are doing like affordable day rentals
Yeah.
for photographers, like charging $200 for a day, where you couldn't get into a normal photo studio for
Right.
$1,000, like minimum, like day, like for a decent place
Yeah.
anyway. And that for me too is a little bit what's good for me is good for my community, and I mean that like a little kickback of
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
and we were tons of friends like that are already coming out just to use the space, and I love that. Like again, connecting people, but also giving people an opportunity to get a good space at a fraction of the price they would have normally paid. I think is a win, and I think that's a good thing for creativity. And I think artists too hope will look to support one another. You know what I mean? Like photographers can be lone wolves, but there's a lot of good people that are trying to help other people out, and
Yeah.
there's enough fish out there. There's like I think we're good. Like we can support one another, and that's kind of one of the things I want to help do as well, especially with young upcomers, and even doing podcasts like this. I think that's good. I think that's sharing some wisdom, sharing some time. I think that's good for the city, and we're stronger in numbers too.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it usually comes like even with mental health too, because like one's own mental health can cost with like many situations going on. So like, how do you deal with your mental health as a person of your caliber and in your position, and even with the amount of projects you work on? Have you ever felt at times it could be like overwhelming?
Oh, damn yeah. Hell yeah, dude. Of course, of course. Even like just the weight of running a business like
Yeah.
that as a young entrepreneur, man, like that, there's huge weight there. Um, for me though, like it's about keeping myself like in line first, 100%, man, and being very in tune with myself in that way too. And that's something I've learned too. For me, it's like things like getting out and exercising, like going for walks and skateboarding,
Yeah.
or I started playing tennis again with my buddy yesterday, like stuff like that, like just getting outside, people, seeing people. For me, it's really important. I'm very extroverted, so even during the pandemic, that was tough, right? Like not being able to like see friends or connect with people in that scene. That was really hard, man.
Yeah.
And then yeah, like and my family, like being just supportive and there
Yeah.
and present
Yeah.
is just super important for me and who I am. But yeah, always checking in, and I have a great my wife as well is an amazing partner that like we really keep each other like
Yeah.
we're there for each
Exactly.
other. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's you need that. You 100% need that. And then community,
Yeah.
like having good community to help
Yeah.
is super important, and especially coming out of these times. Like actually, the more and I say this a lot to friends and family, like coming out of 2.5 years of pandemic, whatever it's been, a lot of people expect, well, sweet, we're like good, we're back, we're gravy. And for some people we are, but a lot of people they're not,
Yeah.
they're not ready yet, and I think that's tough too when the whole world kind of continues on, and maybe some people aren't really ready yet. For a multitude of reasons, I think we need the empathy and compassion to understand that, and to know that not everyone's at the same place too. Like um, that's important. I think as a society right now, like a lot of people, yeah, just we're kind of moving forward, and I think we definitely need to move forward. Don't get me wrong, but we need to make sure everyone's kind of part of that too, and at their own pace, and not being pushed.
Yeah, no, most definitely. And, even in that sense too, as we kind of like close off for a bit. So, like, even being hardworking and consistently creative in that sense too. So, how do you even bring that longevity to your work, like in that sense too, so that people can like verify, like, that you're going to be like in that spot for like a very long time?
Yeah, I don't think you do know. Like that's kind of the cool thing too. But for me, like I said, good work begets good work. Good work brings in more good work, and being a good person, I think, also helps with that. But also coming back to your principles and not getting put in a box. Like I still don't want to be put in that box. And I, I'm not, and like again, like I'm not here for like the fame and any of that stuff. Photographers getting famous changes the paradigm of
Yeah.
what you're doing. For instance, you're there to see others. You don't want to be seen. Is kind of
Yeah.
the point of that.
Yeah.
But like I think honestly, like we're putting in good work and having something to say too. Like you know what I mean. You don't always have to be out there shooting or doing something without something to say per se. Like people see that. So the thing with Instagram too is like where people are always constantly pushing out content. I think a lot of people are taking a little step back now too, where it's like, what do they want to put out? What do they want to be seen? Like, you know what I mean? Like, how are they changing that conversation? And I think that's good to have those conversations with yourself too, and what you want to say, what you want your work to represent, and you want the quality to be there. I think that's always at the forefront. So yeah, I don't think there's any like special algorithm per se to like be there. I think, but keep working and good work will continue to come, in my opinion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
most definitely. And do you have any like regrets in your life overall, or do you regret nothing in that sense?
I regret not coming to Toronto earlier with like university.
Oh,
Like I
true.
danced around that for a while and went like out to other cities that I just ended up here. So I would have skipped that. Like I did like a 2 years of creative writing at University of Windsor, which was amazing party time, but I was just gonna end up in the
Yeah,
city anyway. And
yeah,
like, it was one of those things where I was like, I don't know
yeah,
what the fuck I'm doing with my time. But
yeah,
maybe that, but like not really, because even the people I met there and the relationships I
yeah.
have, like still like friends and learning what cities you don't want to be in maybe is also part of that. So I don't know, not really, because like honestly, like for me and the way I do want to live is it's about the journey, not the
Yeah,
destination. And I think
exactly.
photographer,
Yeah,
as a photographer, that's a big part of it. And just kind of going with it, man, as it happens. Like a lot of us kind of get anxious about what's the next thing going to be, what's this going to be,
yeah,
and it's like letting that go. Working hard to get yourself to a certain place, but letting that go, and then you know, searching out the stories that you want to tell with the people you want to tell matters almost more.
yeah,
You know what I mean,
exactly.
or says more maybe, which I think is cool too.
Yeah,
Like not trying to rush to the next thing, but kind of let it happen and then ride it as much as
yeah.
possible. Maybe like a skateboard, like that's kind of it. Like you don't know how that trick's gonna go, but you're gonna do your best, and hopefully it's under your feet when
Yeah.
you come down off the stairs.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I could say like maybe like one good thing about that whole University of Windsor experience. You're close by to Detroit and all that. All you need to do is like kind of like travel to the city, have your passport, like stay for like maybe the night. Check out some shows and all that too. Because like I think even with Detroit, like they have more concerts and more stuff
Yeah,
going
man.
on like
Yeah,
than
man.
like in Windsor. So you're more
That's actually a great
yeah.
point. So, for instance, if you are going to Detroit, go to Slow's Barbecue and go to Old Miami. It's like an amazing dive bar. And exactly, go to like a Tigers game and then go to the Fox Theater to see a show. Like,
Yeah.
there's so much. Exactly, that city's happening, man. And like,
Yeah.
a lot of people don't recognize that either, or like just see the headlines of a dead city. But it's not. There's like community gardens in that city, man. Like, I went to the city like 10 years after I was down in Windsor, and it's amazing. There's actually strong community, like
Yeah.
really strong community. And yeah, it's place isn't getting recognition anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But super cool place, a lot of cool stuff
Yeah.
happening. And that's like again, like any good city, you got to kind of search it out. You got to,
Yeah.
you got to. You want to be in this like in the city to really kind of get the most out of it. You got to go out and do the most. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And go to those shows or try out that food or
Yeah.
take out that like back street place. Like that's
Yeah.
for me, that's my favorite thing because there's always more to explore.
Yeah.
Especially in a city like Toronto
Yeah, most
or
definitely.
Detroit.
And yeah, most definitely because I know even like with Detroit too, like, it's better to have that passport than to not have that passport because, like imagine like staying in another city too where maybe nothing much is going on and it's not bordering like a major city. like you're gonna be stuck there for a bit. So it's just like eating pizza and just like doing your work thing and all that. So
Yeah, man.
yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
I know you have like a lot of other stuff going on in your life, with the studio, with traveling as well too. But do you have any like closing remarks you'd like to say? And do you want to like shout out like your social media for people who want to follow you and all that?
Sure, sure. First off, Instagram is just Ryan Bolton. I'm also have a website, just ryanbolton.ca. And then yeah, the photo studio is called Studio 201, which you can also find on Instagram. And yeah, well, first off, just thanks for having me here,
Yeah,
man. This
man.
has been really cool, and I just love, like I was saying, good chats about creativity and the city and photography and where they all intersect. Um, my last thing would just be for like young up and coming artists, like just go get it. Like you're gonna be getting setbacks constantly. You're gonna have this and that. Like life comes at you hard, but the more you stay focused on what you want to do, what you want to say, and getting yourself get that persistence, that stuff will always pay off.
Yeah.
And good people will always see. People will always see that. You know what I mean? Like, just keep going. Like on and like, yeah, I do worry about how expensive things are getting and how hard it is to be an artist in the city, but um, I think there's a perseverance and persistence will pay off, and good work will always kind of rise to the top. So just keep going.
Yeah, no, exactly. Ryan, thank you for coming by to
Yeah,
the
homie.
podcast and all that. It was definitely like a pleasure having you to
You.
share your story and everything like that too. And, even like sharing like the gems too, like with everything, just with the socials, with everything. So I think like once people do listen to this, like it'll be very like amazing to see and like even like watch it too as well too. So, and
What's up?
yeah, man. And thank you guys for watching as well too. It will be dropping soon on all platforms. Give it a review on Apple Podcasts, like if you can as well too. And then yeah, check it on Spotify, Buzzsprout, anywhere that you get your podcast. It'll also be on my channel as well too. And just definitely tap in. And this is Josh, also known as Yashu, episode 28 of TLOY Talks with the legendary Ryan Bolton, signing off.
Peace.
Peace.